Okay, guys, I'm Rahul Kadyan. I work at Myntra, a fashion company in India. I contribute to the ecosystem, and I'm the proud organizer of First Vue India meetup. Okay, on my part, I guess I'm ready. I got cold feet, hands are sweaty. You can check if you can read the text. This is just a calibration that you can read the text. I'll adjust text levels for you. If you feel you can read the code. Those who can't read the code, please raise your hand.
Who can't?
Yeah. Oh, it's too small for you.
No, I was going to say I can.
You can. Those who can't. I just want to adjust the text. Yeah, cannot. Okay, so I'll just adjust the text for you. If you want a little larger, I can do that. Just say, all good?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Oh, anyways, these slides are there, so if you want to follow along on your system, you can do that as well. Okay, let's get started. So, what is an SFC? So, SFC stands for Single File Components. It is an HTML-like file which has various top-level tags, we call them blocks. So each block is a language region. So you can see there's a template at the top. So template is to store your HTML, or basically the template language is HTML. There you define your components, render logic. Then there's a script. There you define your components, behavior, and default language for that block is JavaScript. Then a component might have some styles. Their default language is CSS, but Vue spec specifies that a component or a .vue file SFC can have one template, or at max one template, a script, and one and more styles. It doesn't say about any other kind of blocks you can have on it. So it's flexible to that. So you can add something like this, a documentation in your single file component. And the default language for docs is chosen to be Markdown, but you can change it. You can have even more. An internationalization block right inside your component. And you pretty much can have anything you want in here. So how these parts, how these blocks of SFC are compiled, we are going to see today. Before going to that, why would you prefer an SFC? They are not standard files. You need a compilation for step for them. Then why would you use an SFC? So they bring lots of value to you. So first thing, one component, one file. So you don't have to juggle in with your JavaScript file, your HTML file, your CSS file just to create one component. It reduces your cognitive overhead. Means I'm editing a component, I don't have to look into the one HTML file, one JavaScript file. I'm splitting my editor into 3 parts and just looking at all those files. So all those things are no more a concern now. Then templates. Good beauty of SFC, particularly Vue SFC, is that it's based on HTML. And that also allows us to write templates using HTML directly. In some sense, it says us write templates rather than render functions. So, and we'll see why templates are good. Then .vue file makes you to compile it. So you are compiling your component ahead of time. That would give you lower package sizes and faster components. So since you are compiling, that's a necessary step. So you can have your choice of language. If you want to write your templates in Pug, you can write that. If you want to write TypeScript, you can do that. If you like Sass, you can do that. So it gives you a choice of language. And that's special to Vue.js, that your styles never leak a component. You can make them scoped or use CSS module. Your style is always inside the component. That's my part there. Static analysis and optimizations. So we know HTML. We can statically analyze all the tags. Language system is pretty much limited, so we can do very good things with it. So we'll see in later slides what we are doing in static optimizations. Shareable. So if you want to share a component, you just copy a file and send it on any medium you want. You don't have to bundle your 3 or 4 files just to share a component with your teammate. That's all. I guess it's pretty convincing that you should use SFCs. So, templates. They are hated in some other worlds, but Vue embraces them. And why? So, they are just HTML. And we know HTML. Almost everyone. It's not like you should be a front-end developer to know HTML. Everyone knows HTML. It might be an overstatement, but yeah. So, Vue supercharges HTML with expressions and directives. So, expressions and directives gives you power to write your JavaScript or your logical aspects of your component inside the template. So, let's go one by one what features that Vue component templates provide. Like, this is called an expression interpolation. So, you can directly put a JavaScript expression inside your template, and that would be rendered at the runtime. You can have loops, so you can iterate over arrays, or in this case, just from 0 to 5. Then you can bind events to your DOM, and that too declaratively. Then you can bind your attributes on elements. Also, you can have if-else kind of chaining, so you can write conditional code in your templates. And that pretty much gives you all the tools you need to write a declarative rendering logic. But we will see how Vue interprets this and converts into a function which is executed in the browser. Okay, before that, let's compare template and JSX. They do same things, but they are dependent on different technologies. Templates are an extension of HTML, whereas JSX is an extension of JavaScript. So, in some way, they are both good. It's not like you should prefer over template or JSX. They are doing same thing. It's a matter of choice. But templates are very declarative. Why? Because I just showed you there's only one way to write a loop, one way to write a conditional. In JSX, it's flexible. You can write a loop in many ways. You can map over an array. You can do a for loop. You can do almost anything because it's flexible. And that flexibility is good sometimes. Most of the time, declarative wins over when you're writing templates. Optimizations. So, as you see, in template is HTML, very static, limited flexibility. That gives compilers a relatively easy way to optimize your rendered JavaScript functions. In JSX, it's pretty hard because there are so many variables, so many ways you can represent your render function, your rendering logic. So it's very difficult in JSX. So I'll say there's no silver bullet for writing components. You would need templates as well as JSX. But for personally me, I write 99% of my components in templates. And those 1% unfortunate reasons, I go to JavaScript render functions rather than JSX. I just don't like the syntax. Okay, let's talk about compilation. So you see there's a simple greeting component that says hello and your name, and somehow my name is Fu. This component is rendered here. So what Vue template compiler does, it takes that HTML and converts to a JavaScript function, something on the right. We'll see how it does that. So there are 4 stages. It takes your template. So basically it extracts only the template part from your .vue file. Then generates, let's call it tree, which represents your template in some form of objects. Then that converts into a simple JavaScript function, where that JavaScript function doesn't work everywhere. So it tried to normalize it to something which works everywhere. Okay, let's see. So there's a div element with the text inside it that renders hello and your name. How does that represent into our AST? So it passes tag by tag. It takes your tag, extract out all the attributes, all the children, and then generates this sort of an object tree. So if you say we have a div, Inside the div, we have a child which is a text node, and the text node is again passed into expressions. So Vue detects like which is a static text and where is your expression, what are the bindings. So this information is collected when your template is passed into a tree. Then using this tree, it writes a simple plain JavaScript function, which is almost as a one-to-one mapping to everything we see on the syntax tree. So if you go, so just ignore with this for a moment, and whatever you see underscore C, underscore V and S, you can technically replace it with create element, which you might have seen in Chris's workshop. So consider this thing like H or create element with div and a static class and an array of children. This V is basically a toString method, and S is as well. So this is basically a string children. Now what is with this? So you might have seen that in template we don't do this dot name, we directly write name. Why? Because we wrap this thing in this context, and which is the instance of that component. So name becomes this dot name because it is rendered inside this context of the component. But not all browsers allow you to write this kind of code. So Vue transpile it to something simpler. So it stores this on an object and replaces all this name and all those instances directly to that, basically this dot name. So it does it for you. That's why you don't have to write this dot name. Okay, so this is very important part of this thing. If you have questions, you can ask in between right now, or should we do it at the end? So you have any questions right at this moment, you can ask. Yeah, please.
So in my build process, I've got Babel, which is transpiling the JavaScript. Is that going to happen alongside of this?
No, we are just compiling the templates. We compile the templates, then we give it to Babel, and then Babel does its stuff. So it's before Babel, before any other tooling. Okay, let's move on. It's all cool, but why do I need to know this? So, knowing how your compiler works, you can do different kind of optimizations on your components. Compiler does something like called automatic caching for you. So, what is automatic caching? Do you see this component? Okay, in this component, there's a div tag. Inside that, I'm rendering a paragraph where is an interpolable expression, and there is one more paragraph which doesn't use any part of state. And if you see the rendered function inside, this function basically represents the second paragraph, this part of the code. Okay, and this part of the code represents the first paragraph. So if name changes, the render function would be called, and this is the wasted effort by JavaScript interpreter. This should not be called because nothing has changed here. So Vue runs some optimizations on this thing. It tries to find all the trees where you are not accessing this state directly and extract them out as static methods. Oops, it's gone, and it's replaced by a cast static method. So first time your method would be called, so basically that second paragraph is here now. It's called static render functions. So in this array, it stores all the cast method which render part of your component. This method would be called once when your component rendered first time. After that, it's reused. So this .m0 is a helper to call first the static render function from that array, and it stores the result and keeps it until the component's life cycle. So let's say you have a component which is absolutely static, just text. And if you run optimization on this thing, there's no render function. It's just the root node is cached. This makes your component very performant. But this thing, it's already done under the hood. You don't have to worry about this thing. But it's good to know means what kind of trees it caches. Let's say, let's take another example. Okay, you see, in this thing, I just copied MIT license template, and I'm putting today's date there, today's year there, using new date and this thing. So all the other paragraphs, the paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and 3, they are static. They have no state. When I do optimize this component, it will take away all those. Oops, what happened? Yeah. So Vue compiler doesn't take all the static parts. So it tries to find those static nodes which has HTML child. So let's say if you are writing a paragraph and text, and you have a element, a sibling element which uses state. So it won't try to optimize this one because the cost of optimization is more than directly rendering that element. So in such scenarios, we bail the optimizations. But you are smarter than the compiler. You know that this part of code would change once a year. So what you can do, you can tell component that this gonna render only once. And no matter if optimization turned on or off, this is extracted out as a static render function. This would definitely break on New Year's Eve. Some developer who's just sitting there and it's 2019, it should be 2019, 2018. But it's his fault, it should be partying. Okay. So those things are out of the box. They are already shipped in this compiler. But you can do more things. What things can you do? Internationalization. So I show you an example where there was a block of code that was in the first slide. There was some string in I-18 block. So you can take those strings and build a component something like this. So all the internationalization libraries, they do strings translation runtime. So they have to, so they sometimes, basically they add some complexity to your components. Some slowdown is there, but you can tell your component to read those strings and compile a language specific component. Let's say this is English. Diana, this is for you. Yeah. Okay. So you see that the rendered function has translations inside it. So I have provided hello and that string interpolation that has been converted to this. This is pretty awesome. And even better thing is, this is the code to do this thing. So find translation. We'll find the translation node from there. This translation node, where I defined all the mapping between what the string is called in each language. It'll find that node and give me the correct text for that. Then this, I have to parse that string again because Vue has already, the compiler has already processed, and we are doing the transmission after the compiler has processed. So I'll reparse it for the compiler and store it. And do it for all the child nodes of that element. So basically, I'm just updating the text on that from the translation. And in your Vue config file, you can find that Vue loader in options, dot modules, you can put this post transform node. Now you have your own personal internationalization client, so a library that works at compile time. Cool. So yesterday I was sitting in Chris's workshop, and he has proven patterns on how to test your components. So what he was telling people, you should not use classes. You should have something like data test and put attributes and use those data test attributes to find that element to test. That's genius. You can have a round of clap for him. Okay. But problem with this approach is that makes your generated render function little blotted. You see, all those data test attributes are there. They would be saved in your production code and they have no use there. What if I say you can remove them? Ooh, this function is way more smaller than the original one. How to do that? One line of code. So you iterate your all the AST tree. Any element which has attributes, you just find and remove Chris's data test. And you do it for all the child as well. Next, you put it on the modules, and it's done. How? Okay, so this part is just an anecdote for all those who want to contribute to all the compiler libraries. So it's an overview how a compiler works. So at the root, we have Vue template compiler. It has a method called parse component, which reads your component and gives you block. Like template block, this is the content. I18 block, this is the content. So it just parses your component into a component descriptor, we call it, which has all the blocks. And you can use that descriptor to find content of a particular block. Then your template compiler provides another method called compile that takes in the template block and converts into a render function. So the render function has with this syntax which browsers don't like. So there's another package which takes that compiled JavaScript function and transpile it to ES2015 which browsers can run. So that part is there. And all these small packages are packaged into one low-level utility called Vue component library utilities, which has all the shared compiler utilities which you can use to build on your own compiler. So Vue component compiler is a high-level utility using that utils. So it is a framework agnostic compiler which can run in any environment. And Vue loader, Vue crawler plugin, and parser, they are either using Vue component compiler or Vue component compiler utils. So you can. So this is the complete compilation pipeline. You can find if you have some ideas or if you see something is not working, so you know where you have to contribute. And that's all. That's the fun fact. These slides are built with Vue.js, with something called Keynote.sh, and it would be called Keynote.sh until Apple sues me for taking their name away. Yeah. Good thing is I live in India and Apple do nothing in India. Okay, questions? Yeah.
What's the hackiest thing that you've thought of doing or have actually seen someone else do, modifying like SFC compilation?
Okay.
You heard any really like crazy ideas that have come to you that you decided against?
Yeah. So one more cool thing with compiler you can do is create custom directives. Like v-own and v-model, they are compiler directives. So they are compiled so they are converted into value and event function at compile time. So I thought I can have one more directive. I called it v-console. So I can do console.log inside the template. Anyways. Yeah.
Just now you mentioned style leaking. So
Yeah.
that's one of the major benefit of that, right?
I encounter problems when I have dynamic components. So a lot of the styles, when I scope it, it would not, because it's dynamic, because it does not have all these special hash behind the style. We use /deep to solve that. Is there any other way to solve that kind of issue?
Okay, so for style scoping, what we do is we take your style and pre-process it to put a data v attribute on each of the selector. So the render function also does this thing. So when it's rendering, it will take that attribute and put it on every node. So if somehow it cannot detect a node which is inside the children and it's a HTML node without that attribute, your style won't go there. But style would never leak outside of the component. Like it's a component A and component B. Your style won't ever affect the component B because it's contained inside that. But something from outside can affect component A's styles. Because if there's a more specific selector that can affect that style. So I guess, I hope I answered your question.
My question is that if I still want to apply the style to the dynamic component, if I don't scope it, then it would apply. But if I scope it, I want a container, right?
Yeah.
But then all my dynamic components would not get that style.
Okay, I guess in such scenarios, CSS module would be a better approach.
Or CSS module?
Yeah.
Which you may hear about tomorrow.
Any more questions? Okay, I'm good to close my shop.